Hey, 515 family, we're back in 2022. We've got Mr. James Duck here in the studio to kick things off. How you doing today, James?
I'm doing good. Thank you very much for having me on the 515 podcast. I appreciate it.
You're more than welcome. You want to tell the viewers a little bit of history of yourself?
Well, professionally, I'm known as Bigtime, the most controversial man alive, and now the owner of Windy City Pro Wrestling, WCPW. I've been in the wrestling business since 1997, so that makes me a little bit of an old man. But that's the general basis of my history.
How'd you get started in wrestling?
That's an interesting story. Long story short, I was at a wrestling show in Chicago at the United Center, a WCW show, and as I was leaving, I was handed a flyer for a training school out of Chicago, and went up there, signed a contract, started training. Didn't have a particularly good experience with that training school and left for Windy City Pro Wrestling after 2 years with the first school. So that's how I got started.
And now you're the owner of Windy City Professional Wrestling.
Isn't life funny like that? Yeah.
Isn't it weird how things work?
Yeah, I joined Windy City Pro Wrestling in January of 2000, and I trademarked the name in November 2015, and I've just relaunched the company as of December 2021. So yeah, over 20 years later, the guy who walked through the door as a trainee is now the owner.
So you did some professional wrestling, your own self?
Yes, many hair follicles ago and about 60 pounds ago.
Did you ever get a chance to wrestle overseas?
I did not. I primarily stayed local, so I didn't pursue the international career. Mainly in the Midwest is where I wrestle.
Okay. So. And now you're opening up a wrestling school in Sycamore, correct?
I am. The new WCPW training school is open for business, and we are accepting students. And right now, I am going to be the trainer for the basics. I'm in talks with several people to come in and be specialty trainers, people who have traveled the roads a little bit more than me.
Okay.
Well, a lot bit more than me, actually, if I'm being honest. And, I don't want to be a typical training school of take your money and then you're stuck with me for, 5, 10, 15 years with no advancement. I want you to come in, learn what you need to, and after a couple years, you move on to the next step, go to WWE's Performance Center and have an actual career in the business. I don't want you to be a local superstar. I want you to come to WCPW with the hopes of having an actual professional wrestling career.
Excellent. So if I was one of your students, what would be the first thing that you taught me?
First thing that I would teach you, aside from learning the moves properly and safely, would be camera.
I'm pretty accident prone, so.
Well, a lot of people who come through the door are. So, but what I would teach you is camera presence. Just knowing where the camera is at all times.
What do they call that? Roll. When you roll, right? When you get on there and you talk. You got to be able to go up there and roll.
Oh, you mean like roll with an interview?
An interview.
Promo.
The gift of gab kind of a thing.
Well, that's something you can't teach. I mean,
you either have it or you don't. Okay.
That's so true. I mean, and it's obvious if you turn on WWE nowadays and you see people cutting a promo, you can tell, who's speaking off the cuff, who's rolling with it, versus who's had it something that's totally scripted for them.
Scripted, and they have to rehearse it.
If you don't feel it,
sure.
if you don't feel the words that are coming out of your mouth, you're not going to believe.
It's not natural. It's not believable.
Exactly.
Yeah.
But definitely camera presence and how to appear larger than life. That's funny coming from a guy called Bigtime, larger than life. But you don't have to be Andre the Giant big to be a big, personality. I mean, I'm only 5'8", and I steal the show out from every performer that I've ever worked with because, I can get more reaction with the turn of my head than somebody who does 3 flips off the top turnbuckle. And that's presence, that's timing, that's knowing your craft and your art and just how to perform.
A lot of it's playing the crowd.
It is, and you got to have a feel for the crowd, and those are. Getting a feel for the crowd is something you can teach. Having a gift of gab or being a good promo, that's a little bit more difficult, and not everybody's going to be able to do that.
Now, when did your wrestling school open?
Officially January 2nd, that's what we advertised online. We're getting inquiries and whatnot, but, unfortunately there's a lot of game players online sending you the emails just trying to get your...
So if somebody was wanting to get a hold of you, tell everybody how to get a hold of you.
If you are interested in inquiring about the WCPW training school, you can send me an inquiry directly at wcpwowner@gmail.com, and you get the boss man himself. There's nobody filtering that email account. That is my personal email account. So if you're interested, drop me a line.
Excellent. Now, you've got some questions that came through on the Windy City Professional Wrestling fan mail. We got some questions, right?
All right, yes.
Cam, you want to read us a couple of those questions?
Matthew Askren asks, conceptually, where is WCPW currently at in your grand plan / strategy?
Right now, where we're at is very early stages. It has taken a long time to get here. A lot of people ask me, Bigtime, what took you so long? And the thing is, when I trademarked the name, 6 months after I trademarked the name, this company overseas stole the name. They committed trademark infringement, and they did that for the better part of 2 or 3 years. And I just didn't think it was sound business strategy to try and relaunch when this multimedia conglomerate overseas is flooding YouTube and social media with their version of WCPW. I wanted to get them to stop before muddying the waters and trying to launch mine at the same time. So that took me 3 years to get them to stop and change their name. And when I did that and I was ready to relaunch, this company out of the West Coast stole the letters WCPW, and I had to get them to stop. And then when I finished up with that, this company out of Texas stole the name. So 3 different companies stole the WCPW.
And these were wrestling companies?
Yes. They stole the name or tried to, and I had to get them to stop. And
it wasn't like some restaurant or,
no.
Kind of like what Vince McMahon went through with the WWF versus WWE and why he had to give it up.
A little bit like that, but Vince McMahon...
What was it? The
World Wildlife Foundation.
Yeah, Vince had to change because of that. Okay,
Yeah.
So it was other wrestling promotions that were stealing your stuff.
Yeah, so it took me a long time to get to this relaunch show. We did the cold open in 2018. Drew poorly, but we at least got the name out in commerce and the trademark out in commerce. But we had a great show. It was the best show that very few people saw, and that was in Chicago. So... but after that, I was dealing with the other companies trying to take the name and getting them to stop. And then COVID hit when I was going to relaunch in March of 2020. I promoted that show for 6 months. We had a good crew of people coming in from all over. Had local newspaper coverage, had local radio station coverage. I was feeling really good about the show. And 48 hours before the show, COVID hit. They shut everything down and they canceled my show. So it took almost 2 years to get a place that was willing to lessen the COVID restrictions and protocols enough to where trying to run a show could be profitable again. So, we had that show last month in Sycamore, beautiful facility in the Park District. And but we're still very early on. In October, I purchased the rights to the old WCPW from the former owner, Sam DeCero, all the intellectual property, 22, 23 years worth, including the massive tape library. So, just because we haven't been running shows, the work behind the scenes has never stopped. And so... We're making strides. I'm not where I want the company to be right now, but we got the first show out of the way. We got another show coming in April, and we're going to be monetizing this massive tape library, this WCPW tape library. I got the blessing of the former owner of the company, and we're going to go from there. So some exciting things happening in 2022 for WCPW.
Excellent. Nice. What's your next question, Cam?
All right. Sonny Rogers asks, will you be honoring some of the past WCPW alumni from time to time?
That's a trick question because there are some people I would definitely like to honor as being very important parts to the WCPW legacy. There's a lot of people who, for their own personal reasons, don't want to work with me. And they would rather work with subpar wrestling promotions, subpar wrestlers that have to wear T-shirts when they get in the ring. And they would rather try and do their own thing instead of get back on board with the real WCPW. It's the only WCPW. It's direct lineage to the original WCPW. It's got the blessing of the only other person who's ever owned WCPW, Sam DeCero himself. So there are some people I'd love to have Vito Two Fingers Fontaine come in. He's a WCPW legend. Steve Boz would be another person that I would like to honor on the show. Sam DeCero has an open invite to come on the show. He's agreed, so it's just a matter of pulling that trigger and getting him on the show. So there's people that I'd like to bring in, but there's a lot of people I would not have anything to do with. We got to remember WCPW went out of business for a reason, and a lot of the people that are still around the Chicago wrestling scene are the very same people who drove the company out of business. So I don't see any advantage to me to bring them back or work with them again when they're the reason the company went under in the first place. So.
Okay, there's a lot of information there. Next question, Cam.
All right, Richie Rich asks, out of all the wrestlers in WCPW, you were the only to fight and show heart for the true legacy of the company. Why is that?
That's because there's a lot of people who love to say, I love this business. Well, to those people who say, I love this business, I ask them one question. What part of the business do you love? It's not the working out and keeping yourself in shape, because all we have to do is look at you and see that you don't love that part of the business because you're out of shape and you don't look like a wrestler. What part of the business do you love? Is it the part where you have to spend money on your professional gear to look like a wrestler? Because we obviously know that you don't love that part because you're not doing it.
It's one of those, you either have it or you don't.
No. It's just a matter of people saying one thing and doing the other.
You can go in there and believe it and have on some bib overalls and be successful.
Yeah.
But because you believe it.
But there's a lot of people that say they love the business and they don't want to do anything that's required to actually sacrifice for the business. I'm here doing a podcast and I'm dressed in an $800 suit. There's not many people in the Chicago wrestling scene that have that kind of dedication to their craft or their art. So the people who said they loved Windy City are also the people who turned their back on it before Sam DeCero went out of business. All the people that I'm being asked about it, will I work with them again? Let's not forget, let's not rewrite history here. They left Windy City. And their absence is part of the reason that Windy City went out of business under Sam DeCero. And they went and worked with other people and competed against Sam. So there's a lot of people who talk now nostalgically that they love this company or that they're big Sam DeCero fans. I'm the only person who honors Sam DeCero's legacy. Using wrestlers that look like wrestlers. Making sure that the standard for the company's production, the ring, the logos, the curtains. I'm not running a rinky-dink fly-by-night company.
I've been to your studio. It's pretty impressive.
Well, thank you very much. I appreciate that because I've spent a lot of money. I've spent a lot of years trying to get this right, and I did not want to debut it until it did look right.
And one thing that I noticed is that your ring colors are the same as your suit.
Well, thank you. I got,
That was the $800, right?
There you go. But, I wanted to make sure that people knew that the new Windy City was Bigtime's Windy City,
Nice.
That there is a name attached to the new ownership, and I believe the Bigtime Bigtime brand has market value, and obviously it has value. WWE keeps trying to steal it from me, but that's a story for another time. But just to wrap up the original question is, there's a lot of people who talk about loving the original Windy City who clearly either have forgotten what the concepts of Windy City were or the standards of Windy City were, but I haven't. I've been in touch with Sam DeCero for over a decade trying to get this deal done, and it finally happened. It took 9 years of negotiating to get the tape library purchased and all the intellectual property purchased. So To the people who say they love Windy City, I call BS on it. You say you love it, but you're like that woman abusing boyfriend. You tell her you love her and then you slap her around and disrespect her. And that's how I feel about a lot of the people who, these newfound fans of Windy City. Hey, I've been around this business a long time. I have a long memory, and I remember which ones of you talk crap about Windy City, and you ain't fooling me.
You got some issues, man.
Well, a lot of people have issues with me, and I've never been on a podcast before, so I've never had an opportunity to address them.
You're more than welcome to address anything you want here.
Thank you. I'll try.
Absolutely.
I'll try and keep.
I think you got one more question.
Yeah, I got one
Cam.
more questions here for you.
And this is coming from the fan mail.
Yes. These were sent through Twitter and the website and some personal text.
Some places you can get a hold of James here.
Yeah.
All right, so Luscious Linton asks, what are your thoughts on wrestlers finally, in some organizations, being recognized as independent contractors and being able to break the forbidden wall? I'm all for it, by the way.
That's a tricky question, so I'll try not to be long-winded on it.
They're all tricky, and you're very long-winded on all of them.
Well, hey, God bless me, right? But
hey, we like to have fun here, brother.
that's fine. I can take a good rib. It's a mixed bag. There's pros and cons to opening the forbidden door or walking through the forbidden door. As a kid, we all dreamed of what would happen if Ric Flair ever fought Hulk Hogan, NWA champion versus WWF champion, and that was our dream match. And it wasn't possible back then, but now more and more promotions are working together. But there's a promoter named Court Bauer out of California with MLW, Major League Wrestling. He's actually suing Vince McMahon and WWE right now for business interference and things of that nature. But he said it best a couple months ago on Twitter. He said, the concept and theory is nice that promoters work together and wrestling companies work together, but the reality is once one company's wrestler is in another promoter's locker room, that's when the backstabbing happens, and that's when the rival promoter is trying to steal away the talent and trying to get details on his contract. And
I remember back in the day when I was super big into the wrestling, you had your districts. Mm-hmm. And the promoters didn't overlap. You didn't steal from other people, mm-hmm. and you didn't do that. WCCW didn't mess with NWA. The AWA stayed in their district. They all had their
territories.
There you go, territories. Yeah.
Well, and that was a gentleman's agreement back then, but
honorable.
The
best that they could.
That system also ended almost 50 years ago. So
I know.
The thing is, Vince McMahon does it. That's what he's being sued for now. I mean, right now he's having Mickie James come from Impact Wrestling to appear on the Royal Rumble, and they're letting her bring Impact's Women's Championship belt with her. And, everybody on the internet is talking about it, but this is no risk to Vince. Vince McMahon draws almost 2 million people weekly. Impact draws 100,000 viewers weekly. So it's all benefit for Impact, but Vince isn't getting anything out of it except maybe a little bit of goodwill online.
Okay. All right, well, let's take 5.
Okay.
And we'll come back and give a big shout out to your fans and some of the people that have helped you along the way.
Okay, sounds good.
We'll be back in 5.
Frame it up.
We're back from our 5-minute break. We got James here talking about Windy City professional wrestling.
That's right. We're doing a good job of it, too.
Yeah. So let everybody know exactly where they can get a hold of you and find all your information.
Well, I left Facebook several years ago after that big old hack, so you're not going to find me on Facebook. Anybody pretending anybody pretending to be WCPW.
You got a Twitter account?
We do have Twitter.
There you go.
The handle is Official WCPW. After so many people try to steal my name, we are the official WCPW on Twitter.
Official.
And let's see, there's also officialwcpw.com is our website. You can find some interesting articles from the past there, as well as upcoming show information and results from our December show. And then you can also join bigtimesboard.com. That's the unofficial message board of WCPW. And I believe that's it for our social media presence. We got to expand that. So
what kind of shows you got coming up in 2022?
Well,
when's your next show?
Right now, April 9th is where we're gearing to head back
April 9th.
To the Sycamore Park District. There were some loose ends from the December show. We brought in the phenomenally talented Layla Gray and Tiffany Nieves. They've been having this feud that's just gone on in promotion after promotion across the United States. And it didn't get settled at our WCPW show. Luke Curtis got involved on Layla's behalf, and Damian Fenrir, he came in and saved the day and even the odds. So this might be the first time that anybody's hearing it, but already signed for April 9th is an intergender tag team match. The Vicious Vixen, Layla Gray, and Certified Luke Curtis will be taking on Tiffany Nieves and Damian Fenrir. So that is an exclusive for the 515 podcast.
Oh, wow. We're first to hear about it. Nice.
Yes. But we had a good crew of people there, and a lot of people I've never worked with before. So it'll be interesting who makes another appearance in April, see which ones come back.
Excellent. What's going on for shows after that?
Well, we are called Windy City Pro Wrestling, so you would think that we have to have shows in the Windy City. So
yeah, that's what I was getting at. You got anything going on in Chicago specifically?
Currently,
yes.
We are negotiating.
Oh, yeah. I knew I was tapping into something.
But, summertime shows, they tend to not draw as well. There's so many other things to do in Chicago. The lakefront is beautiful. And so summertime shows we try to avoid, but I'm sure in the fall and early winter we'll be headed back to Chicago. Maybe before then. There's a couple contracts that I'm negotiating right now.
But aside from shows, you can get a hold of James here and go to his wrestling school.
That's right. The WCPW training school is open in Sycamore, Illinois. Again, send your serious inquiries only. And by serious, I mean, if you have never done an athletic thing in your life and you weigh 450 pounds and you're used to watching Dr. Phil on your couch, that's probably not going to be a serious inquiry. So
he's looking for some serious talent.
I'm looking for the standouts, the people that you do not see every day. My old boss, Sam DeCero, used to say, if you are not with Windy City Pro Wrestling, you are on the outside looking in. And I always hated it when he said that. I thought it was the most arrogant and cocky thing in the world. But now that I own Windy City, I have to agree with him. We are the standard. We aim to be the best in professional wrestling locally. So if you are not in WCPW, you really are on the outside looking in, because we don't want a roster of people that look like everybody else's. We want the standouts. We want the people who look good on flyers. We want the athletes. We want the superstars. We want the people that don't look like John Q. Public.
All right, so everybody, we're going to wrap this up. Thank you, James, for coming in to the 515 studio. It's been a blast.
Hey, well, thank you for having me. I mean, this is such a nice setup, and it's nice to work with professionals that know what they're doing. So thank you very much.
Well, thank you for that compliment. We do try.
No.
And everybody get a hold of WCPW right here. Here's the man, Mr. James. Big time.
Frame it up.
All right. Catch you guys on the flip side. Get yourself into that pro wrestling.